These days, very few home cooks or restaurants bother making their own chicken broth. Home cooks usually use a canned product or something like a Knorr gel pack dissolved in water, and restaurants usually use powdered concentrate that's mostly synthetic flavor. Of course, these are more convenient and less expensive, but if you want outstanding results, then you have to make your own from scratch, and it's not really that much work. And the homemade product has better taste, more quality, and thickening power that you won't get with any other method.
When you cut the celery, get the leaves off of it. You're not going to use the leaves for this. I mean, you can use them for something else. You could dry them out in the oven overnight, and they're very nice for other recipes. But here we just want the stalks of the celery chopped up coarsely. The celery has been chopped coarsely along with the carrots. I just want to show you the proportions of the onion before I cut those up. I've got about 225 grams of white onion and about 125 grams of red onion, together about 350, which is just a little bit less than the traditional amount, but we're also going to add a little bit of garlic here, which would not have been in the original recipe because garlic back then wasn't considered something you put into broths, but times have changed. We're not afraid of garlic anymore. So I'm leaving out 50 grams of the onion in lieu of the garlic. I'm using a very heavy copper roasting pan for this, which is really ideal. This is what you want if you possibly can. You know, you got to use what you've got. There's the carrots and the celery. There's 4 cloves of garlic. We're going to mix this up a little bit, just loosely. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Then, when you've got it all, you're going to add a little bit of coarse salt. Now, unlike a stock, a broth can have some salt in it. I'm not adding much though. And this is what we have after about 45 minutes. You notice that the skin it's not really brown. It's cooked, but you see some of the vegetables that zoom in on the corner here, so you can see the vegetables are quite caramelized at the corners. But we haven't taken it to the point where it's actually anywhere close to being burnt, and that's important because we don't want any bitterness in this at all. Now I've lifted all the chicken parts off and scraped the bottom some of this roasting pan. I'm going to deglaze it a little bit with, I don't know, I think it's about 90 milliliters, something like that. Okay, there we have this. Now we're going to add some water to this. And there's 2 liters of water, a few black peppercorns, a few more. Not too many though. Half a dozen cloves, whole cloves, and our first dose of thyme goes in, and then finally bay leaf, and we'll begin to bring this up to a simmer. When you see small bubbles begin to break the surface, you can begin counting the first time. Okay, after about 30 minutes has passed, it's been kept between about 75 and 80 degrees Celsius. If you're using a thermometer, you can just gauge it by the amount of bubbling too. Now I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to reduce the heat way down to 3. During the cooking time, it pays to take a peek once in a while, make sure that it's not going crazy in there or that it's not boiling at all. It is. Put the tight-fitting lid back on it and let the time finish, of course. Okay, it's been 2 hours now. I'm going to take the lid off, add the rest of the thyme. Stir. I'm not changing the heat setting any, but because the lid's off now and the heat was relatively low, it's just under 3, this is going to cool down a lot. So we give it the last little bit of cooking here now. And during this last phase of cooking, you need to break up that chicken that's in there, get it off the bones. It'll just fall off. We want it to dissolve into the stock as much as possible now. When it comes to filtering this, you're best off using the first stage of a colander like this. I can't really do it around the camera, so I'm going to put it in and then I'll turn the camera back on. Okay. Now, if you're very frugal, you can go through and pick the chicken away from the bones here. Certainly in a restaurant we would have some, low-level cook do this so that we could reuse the chicken for staff food. To me, this is just part of the expense. It's the expense in making the broth. And this sort of chicken, fortunately where I'm at, is really inexpensive. This 1.5 kilograms of chicken is worth, I don't know, in US dollars today, I don't know, $3, something like that. So it's certainly affordable. You can pick through this, but you're going to have a lot of bones and a lot of fibers from the the thyme and stuff. It's not going to be very pleasant. So once you get this through, then we're going to pass the liquid that's now beneath this through a sieve. With a little bit of help here, getting the rest of it through. Now this needs to get chilled down to get it out of the danger zone, so I'll show you how to do that next. Transfer the contents to a container like this, rectangular one with high sides. Put it in a pot like this, and then put this pot, you can put a lid on it loosely. Don't put the lid on tight though, because the volume inside here is going to change as it cools off. But leave some way for it to vent, and then start running water into the pot in a sink. And as the water goes by, it will cool the contents down. Let it sit like this for about 10 minutes with the water running slowly into it. Once the temperature is down below the danger zone, you'll see that there's a layer of fat that's separated here. I could use a fat separating pitcher to try to strain this off, but what will be more effective yet is to put a lid on it, again loosely. Don't put it on tight because the volume is still going to change, and then put it into the refrigerator and let this solidify more before I lift the fat off of it. After this has sat several hours or overnight in the refrigerator, you can see that the fat layer will be a lot easier to remove, just like this.
If you want it to look more clear, you can pass it through cheesecloth. This will result in the loss of some material, and it's generally of no use in a finished recipe, but it does look nice. I'm very pleased to announce the release of Volume 3, The Focus on Food Chemistry. I want to clear up a few things about these 3 volumes. First, they all contain completely different information. There's no duplication, they're not revisions. When I wrote Volume 1, I had 2.5 years of YouTube videos to cover. People had been asking me for the printed list of ingredients for all of those dishes, and so I obliged. There are recipes with stepwise directions and many tips offered throughout, as well as an extensive history of Russian cuisine over the last 1,000 years, but Volume 1 is very different from Volume 2 and 3. In Volumes 2 and 3, I only had about 9 months of YouTube recipes to cover in each, so I was able to provide stepwise directions for everything. In Volume 2, I included a lot of additional information about cooking and some simple examples of flavor chemistry to set the stage for Volume 3. While Volume 2 hopefully got you thinking about some of the processes that go on in cooking and how flavors are expressed and sensed at the molecular level, the topic was painted with pretty broad strokes to make it easy to digest. Pun intended. Volume 3 is a milestone of the series, in which I have included an entire introductory course in food chemistry, which is why Volume 3 is about 70 pages longer than Volume 2. If you just want the recipes, that's okay too. You don't have to read the first few chapters. But if you've ever been curious about what influences tastes and flavors and the rationale for deciding cooking times and temperatures and why things taste different when they're combined in different ways, this book will answer many of those questions. It also paves the way for Volume 4, which will be next year. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.